What's up, guys, and welcome back to LackLuster Gaming, the show for those who love to game but know they're mediocre at best. Starting with the shoutouts, JK YouTube came in first, followed by Kyron Elder and Wyatt Bailey. Before we get moving, check out this little video that Opedget Studio put out. The movie file was actually found in the APK files of Clash Royale. Who knows if it's something they're working on or just something they're trolling us with. Now, the other day, we went ahead and opened up the Arena 11 pack. So, we opened up the magical chest too, that one was free, and now we're gonna open up these other two. Now, the first one just gave us 500 gems and a little bit of gold, which is nice, and if you haven't seen the pictures behind these yet, there it is, blowing out the candle on top of the miner's head, which is really cool. Now let's pop open this super magical, see what we get. A little bit of gold, the barbarian hut, not really one that I use too often. The goblin hut, looks like we're getting a bunch of spawners. Lightning spell, that's pretty good. I love using the lightning spell. We got the musketeer, which is great. Can't wait to get it to level 9. The skeletons, 564. That's amazing. 20 guards, which means we will get a legendary. 20 epics as a second to last card. Guarantees one legendary. So there you go. Little Electro Wizard at the end there. There's a little brief rundown of what we just pulled out of that super magical chest. And a ton of gold. A ton of gold. Thank God. I need to upgrade some cards. So here we go into the deck. As you can see, this deck was actually featured on Clash with Ash's channel. It was one of his pro tip series featuring our Rebel. He's the one who put out this deck. He was getting consistent 12 wins in grand challenges, and I was like, you know what? I gotta give it a try. And I personally only gave it a shot once and made it all the way to 11 with the first run using this deck. So pretty impressive. That's with no skill using this deck. No time to really figure out the inner workings. And I have to put a little disclaimer out because at the time of the video, while I'm recording this, I recorded this about a week prior to the video coming out, and that was prior to the most recent update. Now, after the most recent update, the Dark Goblin is experiencing a glitch where it shoots slower. Its attack speed has been dumbed down, per se. So, if it hasn't been fixed by the time this video comes out, don't use this deck until there is a guaranteed word that the Dark Goblin is indeed returned to its former luster. So, it's a great card. I love using the Dark Goblin, but there's not a whole lot of application for it, and I'm happy to see that this deck right here actually has one. Now, if you don't have the Princess sub and the Archers, if you don't have the Log, try the Zap spell, but other than that, the deck pretty much works together as it should. The Princess is kind of necessary because it baits out the Log, and then once that Log is baited out, you can either go ahead with your Dark Goblin or your Goblin Barrel. So, the basic idea of this deck is to defend using your Goblin Gang, which is also Log bait, defend using your Inferno Tower, defend using your Dark Goblin, and make sure that you're baiting out their Log, their arrows, their poison spell, or whatever type of spells or counters that they have to those specific cards early, and then utilize your other bait deck cards, your other cards that will bait out those spells immediately after the spell has been used. And that is the key to this deck's victory. Now, you're not going to see a lot of 2 or 3 crown wins with this deck. It's not rare. I mean, it's not impossible. There we go. It is fairly rare, though. So, as you can see, we're going up a hog deck, and because of this deck, the way that it's built, it does pretty good against hog decks and other beatdown decks. Now, it does have somewhat of a kind of a weakness to Lava Loon because the air targeting cards in this deck are not very powerful. But we'll get more into that in match number 2. Here we go. Match number 2. Anytime now. Alright, there we go. Match number 2. Sorry about that. So, okay. So, Lava Loon it's been in the meta, and now we're starting to see this big push of Golem and Balloon, and we're seeing a lot of Graveyard too. Now this deck specifically has a few answers to the Graveyard spell, those cards being your Knight and your Dark Goblin, obviously your Princess. Now, if you see somebody using a pump, go ahead and rocket it. Otherwise, save your rocket till the end of the game. Don't release that thing too early. Don't let your opponent know that you have it, you know? It's a kind of a tactic that you guys can use. Once you get your opponent's tower down enough, start targeting an opposite side tower, and then you can use your rocket at the end of the game if absolutely necessary. But if you're going against a Graveyard spell, you want to use your Princess Cross Lane. Now, the reason that you want to use that Princess Cross Lane using going up against a Graveyard spell is so that she can target from the opposite side that Graveyard spell, clump together, use her splash damage to hit a whole massed amount of skeletons all at once, and then after that push is finished, and if you didn't lose that tower, they're still going to have to focus on that side and start spending elixir to continuously drain that side while your princess is moving on the opposite tower. Now, if your princess is moving on the opposite tower, they're going to be forced to spend elixir on the opposite side to counter her, which gives them less elixir to push on that same lane and set up a really good Graveyard push, and that is key. Now, if you're going up against something like the Inferno or the Lava Hound or Golem or other big beatdown decks, you're gonna want to use that Inferno Tower. Obviously, place your princess in the back or even cross lane. Use that Goblin gang to swarm around it and just take it out as quickly as possible. And if it's an air card, use that Dark Goblin as well to do tons of damage. Now, that's pretty much your highest DPS air targeting card, is that Dark Goblin, because it attacks so quickly, other than after this update. But other than that, this deck is really difficult to play against Lava Loon or Golem Balloon. Now, it's not very common, but there have been a couple situations where I've even had to use the rocket to take out a balloon, which is a negative elixir trade, so I don't recommend you do it all the time. But if it comes down to it, just know you have that card in your hands and it's available to you to use as a defensive card. It also works really good defending against Sparky and other troops that you don't want to deal with crossing that bridge. So there you go, we've tied up the match, and here it is at the very end, the final rocket to take out that one last building to secure that win. Pretty awesome. It's a nice controlling deck, and let's get into match number 3 and we'll talk about how to use this match more specifically. So here we go, into match number 3. I'm all off on my timing today with my little transitions, but that's okay. So right off the bat, I'm going to send in my Knight at the bridge so that they target it, send in my Goblin Barrel in the back, right? So we get a tiny little bit of damage. We're going to also use the Dark Goblin to start hammering away at that Mega Minion. We're going to cross lane our Princess to get that Mega Minion, or that Minion Horde out. Now, he's got to spend elixir on that opposite lane. He hasn't done any damage to either one of my towers, but that's okay. Now I know that his main, or at least one of his counters to my princess, is a princess. I'm going to wait till that princess gets almost to the bridge and log it out, hoping that we're going to see something else. And here we go. We got a giant balloon push. Now we're using the Inferno Tower and the Goblin Gang to take it out. And we're also going to place down this Dark Goblin in just a second. Maybe, maybe not. That's all right. We're able to take the balloon out before we get too much damage. And that is going to be the hardest thing about going against this deck. And that's why I showed this one to you. This is the 11th win out of all of the battles that I played. Now we're gonna log out that princess. Luckily our princess survives. Normally I would have cross laned it, however he's going to get for that opposite tower. So I don't necessarily want to cross lane my princess in this specific battle, because I want my princess to A, do damage to the tower that I'm working on, and B, be on the opposite side that they're pushing. So I'm going to place everything in that right hand lane. Now I've got my knight. I'm going to throw my goblin barrel. He counters beautifully with that bomber card, and that is going to be an issue for us. So here we are waiting, we're going to place down that inferno tower, and there we go. It's going to take out that giant. He was a little bit late on that balloon, and now that the bomber has locked onto the inferno tower, we can place the goblin gang and the dark goblin and ensure that that balloon doesn't totally take us out completely. And now that princess is a problem, so we're gonna have to log her out. Now we've done enough damage to that mega minion that we don't have to worry about it, and as soon as it dies, we'll place another knight and a goblin barrel, which he'll counter again beautifully with that bomber, and he's going to come back in with the same push. Now we're doing a little bit more damage than he's doing, so this time we're going to place the dark goblin off on the back side and the goblin gang. We're just changing the strategy up a little bit. Now he is going to get a little bit of death damage from that balloon onto the tower, but that's okay because we're still coming out on top. So here we go again with the knight. Luckily the bomber is actually going to target the knight, allowing that goblin barrel to take out that tower last second. He was just a little bit too early with that bomber. Otherwise, it would have been bad news for us. So there you go, guys. Totally off on all the transitions, every single one this time. I apologize for that, but don't worry, I'll try harder next time. I love you guys. Try this deck out if the Dark Goblin gets that upgrade and gets fixed. Otherwise, I'll see you in the next video. Peace out.